Haida Watchmen, the ever so iconic figures many will find on top of totem poles around Haida Gwaii. For millennia, the Haida sought guardianship from these mythical figures to watch over Haida Gwaii, the lands of the people. A lot of events did happen, from how the Haida got their name, Vikings of the Pacific coast with their fearsome war canoes, to the great disastrous smallpox epidemic brought by the settlers that led to the death of most Haidas. But our world has become smaller and smaller. More and more outsiders get to know the place where the Haidas call home. The watchmen on top of the totem poles might be washed away by countless storms throughout the years. These beings, whom people thought to be mythical, continued to protect the last remaining heritage of the Haida people. One day in 1981, the Haida Watchmen came to life.
So I thought I'm the one who came prepared. It turns out that the tour operator is even more prepared than I am. Yeah, to be honest, I don't even recognize me anymore. Yeah, so we're right now at Mooresby Camp, and later on we're gonna board the boat to Kuna. We'll see you there.
You might have the question, how did the gale force wind affect the itinerary? I actually asked the tour company the day before. Their response was, the tour will be taking an inside passage, unlike the previous tour company who would take us to the open water, unless the weather was really bad, like a hurricane. The tour was very unlikely to be cancelled. To be honest, I didn't feel bad anymore. At least during this trip to Haida Gwaii, I get to see one of those ancient Haida villages. There are 5 major ancient village sites. Kuna, where we're planning to visit during this trip, Tanu, the Hot Spring Island, Windy Bay, and Skangway, the UNESCO World Heritage Site I would have visited the day before if it wasn't for the gale force wind. These villages are all located on small islands in southern part of Haida Gwaii. Therefore, you need to join a boat tour, or you need a boat of your own in order to visit these villages. Before our tour boat left the dock, something extraordinary caught our eyes. A black bear. Yeah, I know it's kind of far away. These black bears can only be found in Haida Gwaii. Through thousands of years of isolation, the black bears, or Tan in the Haida language, became a subspecies of their own. Their long arms help them to climb trees to reach food up there, and their sharp claws made it easy to eat the plentiful of seafood Haida Gwaii offers. They are also the largest black bear you can find anywhere in the world. Whoa, that sounds intimidating and dangerous, huh? The fact is, they just don't care about human beings. You are not something they have interests in, so respect them and leave them alone. There was once a sizable logging industry in Haida Gwaii. Sitka spruce, which Haida Gwaii is quite abundant of, drew thousands of loggers to its shores. as this sturdy yet flexible type of wood was widely used to build airplanes and ships during the early part of the 20th century. To further understand the history of logging in Haida Gwaii, why all of a sudden it stopped, and the long-lasting consequences, we landed at a former logging camp on Louise Island to explore. Louise Island today is mostly uninhabited except for one part seasonally, and that is the ancient village of Kuna. The logging activities on this island peaked during World War II for the harvesting of Sitka spruce. Because this sturdy, non-metal material could avoid radar detection if used for parts like airplane wings. The seemingly eternal landscape, in fact, shows how quickly nature can bounce back without any human interference. However, it doesn't mean you can't find any traces of human activities from nearly 100 years ago. Upon a closer look, you'll find rubber tires and glasses from the 1930s, with no signs of decomposing. Now think about the waves of garbage as humans dump into the ocean and other places in the past 30 years. What's going to happen to them in 100 years? After taking a quick look at this former logging camp, our tour headed to the main attraction of our boat trip. Kuna, or Skedans, is one of the 5 ancient Haida villages in southern Haida Gwaii. Like the other 4, Kuna today is looked after by Watchmen, a program founded by Parks Canada to preserve the historic sites of the Haida Nation since 1981. The program was inspired by the mythical Haida Watchmen, whom you could find on top of totem poles across Haida Gwaii. In order to access the ancient villages, your vessel must obtain the docking permissions from the Watchmen on the marine radio. However, the Watchman at Kuna was not answering our call. It turned out that the Watchman on duty was having a get-together event with members of the Haida Nation on that day, so it was closed for business. This is the only shot I had of Kuna. Well, according to those who had been there, this was pretty much what you see if you actually set your foot on the site of the village today. The village is like a more accessible version of Skangway. It hosts the second largest number of old Haida totem poles in its original location. Now here comes the challenge. If we can't visit Kuna, then does it mean, oh my, it's like the 3rd time my tour gets cancelled. Unlike the previous canceled tours, I paid the money already, and I'm actually stuck in the middle of the sea. After a quick negotiation with our tour members, who also really wanted to visit a Haida ancient village, our fearless Captain Chelsea from Moresby Explorers called Bob and Grace, the watchman stationed at another village called Tanu south of Kuna, for permission to dock. And guess what? We were in luck. With our fearless captain driving the Zodiac in the aftermath of the gale force winds, we were on our way to Tanu. To reach Tanu, we would first need to enter Gwaii National Park and Reserve. This park is unlike any other national parks in Canada. Before the 1980s, this area was prime logging fields where you could find some of the largest logging machines and log boats in the world. A plan to further expand the logging activities in the area triggered a large protest by the Haida Nation and the environmentalists. The Haida Nation was clear. This is our land, and we make the call. The story made to the federal level when the RCMP were sent to Lilo Island, the site of the protest, and arrested some protesters, including Gujo, a Haida leader who later became the president of the Haida Council. Eventually in 1987, the Haida Nation and the Government of Canada signed a deal. The southern Haida Gwaii region would become a protected area cooperatively managed by the Haida Nation and Parks Canada, and logging in southern Haida Gwaii had become history. Funny thing was, I actually get to meet Gujo's son during my trip, but only realized that after I came back from Haida Gwaii. Today, there is another protest, one of the largest ever in Canadian history, that carries the same theme in Fairy Creek, southern Vancouver Island. Some people say the protest was futile and nothing was going to happen. Well, don't forget what happened in Haida Gwaii. It may or may not end the same way, but the eventual outcome will be historical. There is more at stake as bigger players are now involved, but it will be a big chapter written in the history of British Columbia. Almost everyone nowadays, even including the big corporations, say they respect the rights of indigenous communities and they're regretful of wrongdoings in the past acts of colonialism. When the same corporations called in RCMP to evict the protesters, I'm not sure did the RCMP even ask, sorry, but whose land and who's making the call? Finally, we reached Tanu. Tanu was one of the largest and most powerful villages in Haida Gwaii. Many of the most impressive Haida totem poles you find inside the museums around the world come from Tanu. We were welcomed by Bob and Grace, who were serving the final days of the final year of their placement as Haida Watchmen. Once at the Watchman site, make sure you listen to their expectations carefully. Do not do or take photos of things you're not supposed to. Consider the Watchman sites as people's homes. Respect your host and the place. For Tanu, the reason why this place needs to be respected is clear. Everything there is important to the Haida heritage and everything is fragile. This former village today is the only place in Haida Gwaii where you'll find the remaining of over 40 Haida longhouses. To give you a comparison, this is a picture of Tanu back in 1878. The village went into a deep decline after the epidemic of smallpox in a decade earlier, which led to the death of over 70% of the entire Haida population. The last resident of Tanu left in 1885, and the village has been abandoned since. You can see how much nature has reclaimed this once magnificent village in less than 150 years. If you have been following my adventure in British Columbia, you know that the First Nations of the Pacific Coast, including the Haidas, believe that nothing lasts forever. Everything, including the houses and the totem poles, were destined to eventually return to the nature and complete the circle of life. The same with all the buildings in Tanu. It's like a cemetery of an entire village. I was amazed that I get to witness this process. It took less than 150 years to reach the current stage. What's gonna be there in another 150 years? No one knows. Tanu is also the ancestral home of Bill Reed, the artist behind the sculpture The Spirit of Haida Gwaii. After his death, his remains were transported from Vancouver to Tanu on a Haida canoe. Today, the island is home to the resting place of Bill Reed. Photography of his tomb is not allowed, but please see this as a way for us to pay respect to the prominent Haida artist. Like mentioned earlier, everything you see in Tanu today will be gone in the end, as the former village will complete its destiny by returning back to Earth. I feel lucky to be one of the few to have the chance to witness this village during the final stages of its existence, as well as the power of the universe. Despite being unable to visit Skagway, the village site that first drew me to Haida Gwaii, I'm glad I was able to visit Tanu, which is also unique in its own way and something I would certainly plan if I was well aware of its existence when I was planning this Haida Gwaii trip. To me, the visit to Tanu was certainly the highlight of our Haida Gwaii adventures.
Okay, so now we're back to Morse Peak Camp because we went to Tanu, so we're returning back to Sanskrit a bit late. Speaking of which, and now I spoke to the watchman at Tanu, and he used to be a watchman at Skagway as well, and he told me it's extremely interesting down there. So yeah, if you guys want to see me going to Skagway in the future, yeah, you can just let me know. If the response is overwhelming, then in the future I will come back here and go to Skagway. Yeah, you can pretty much leave a comment in any of our Haida Gwaii videos. Basically, I read all your comments, and yeah, if you would like to see Skagway in the future, just leave a comment and let me know.
Now you've seen the highlight, but it doesn't mean our adventure is done yet. In the next and final episode of this Haida Gwaii adventure, we will together explore the Sandspit at its entirety. Plus, aren't you curious where we're going next after this? Follow me to the next episode.
And unfortunately, it crashed